The man in the pickup truck was already following me for 10 miles before I realized he wasn't human. That's the moment everything inside me froze. 10 solid miles on an empty highway, and I hadn't noticed a single thing wrong until the truth slammed into my chest like a punch. It wasn't the way he drove. It wasn't the truck's speed. It wasn't even the way his headlights stayed perfectly locked onto my rear bumper. It was his face. Or whatever sat in the driver's seat pretending to have one. I didn't understand it at first. I glanced into my rearview mirror only because I felt a strange pressure between my shoulder blades, like someone pressing a cold hand into my spine. First, I thought I was imagining it. A long day, a long drive, and a lonely stretch of road at 2:14 a.m. can do that to you. But then I looked, and everything in my body screamed to stop breathing. The truck behind me looked normal, an old, dust-coated red pickup, the kind ranchers use, the kind every small-town road seems to have. But the driver, something was wrong. Deeply wrong. His head was tilted too far, his shoulders too stiff, his outline too still. And his eyes, if those even were eyes, reflected my headlights with a strange, glassy glare, like they weren't looking at the road at all, like they were looking through me, straight into the back of my skull. For a full second I forgot how to drive. Forgot how to breathe. Forgot how to exist. I blinked, hoping it was just a trick of the mirror. But when my eyes opened, he hadn't moved. Not a millimeter. Not a breath. Just staring. Just following. Just wrong. You'd think I'd hit the gas, right? Speed up, get away, do something. Anything. But fear does strange things to your brain. Sometimes it makes you run. Sometimes it makes you freeze. And sometimes, like right then, it traps you in this horrible in-between state where your body responds a second too late, like it's wading through thick, icy water. And then the strangest thing happened. The pickup truck's headlights flickered. Not like a bulb dying, but like someone stepped in front of them. A shadow moved inside the cab. Not the man. Not a body. Something shifting. Something crawling. Something rising from behind the driver's seat like it had been crouched there the whole time. That's when I finally pressed my foot on the gas. But the truck matched me instantly. As if it had been waiting. As if it knew. The highway was dead silent. The moon a thin white scar across the sky. And the only sound was my engine screaming as I pushed my pickup faster and faster down the straight, endless road. But no matter how much I accelerated, no matter how far the speedometer climbed, the headlights behind me stayed fixed in the mirror. Perfectly centered. Perfectly steady. Perfectly wrong. My hands were shaking so badly I almost veered off the road. Sweat dripped down the sides of my face even though the desert air outside was freezing. I kept checking the mirror, hoping, praying the truck would turn off, slow down, disappear, anything. But it didn't. Instead, the thing in the driver's seat leaned forward. Slowly. Purposefully. Like it wanted me to see it. Like it wanted me to understand that this wasn't a mistake. That this wasn't some random late-night driver. No. Something else was in that truck. And it had chosen me. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't being followed by a man. I was being hunted. Before that night spiraled into something I still can't fully explain, everything in my life felt painfully ordinary. My name is Evan, and for most of my 27 years, I've been the kind of guy who finds comfort in routine, the familiar, the predictable, the boring. I work long shifts at a warehouse outside Tucson, the kind of job that leaves your hands cracked, your shoulders sore, and your nights quiet. The night everything happened, I had just finished another 10-hour shift. Nothing special. Nothing stressful. Just another night of stacking boxes, scanning labels, and zoning out to the hum of industrial fans. I remember clocking out at exactly 1:03 a.m., stretching my back, and stepping outside into the cold desert air. The sky was clear, the moon bright. One of those nights where everything feels still, peaceful, almost comforting. My plan was simple. Drive the hour back to my small rental place in the middle of the desert, heat up leftover pizza, take a shower and collapse into bed. That was it. No drama. No fear. No strange trucks waiting for me in the parking lot. Just me, my beat-up pickup, and a quiet drive through empty Arizona highways. The warehouse parking lot was mostly empty. Just a couple of cars belonging to the night shift guys who liked to stay late. My truck waited under a flickering streetlight, dust settling on its hood like an old friend leaning against me. I tossed my backpack into the passenger seat, turned the key, and listened to the familiar sputter before the engine warmed to life. I remember smiling. That truck had been with me through everything. The roads were calm that night. Peaceful. Not a single other car for miles. I rolled down the window, let the cold air hit my face, and played one of those old late-night radio shows. Soft voices, slow music, nothing meant to startle or excite. Just noise to fill the empty space. My mood was mellow, relaxed in that half-tired, half-floating state you only get after long workdays. Driving these roads at night never bothered me. If anything, I liked it. The quiet. The dark. The way the desert stretched forever in every direction. Miles and miles untouched by anything human. The moonlight turned the landscape silver. And the towering saguaro cacti looked like old, peaceful guardians watching over the highway. It was beautiful in its own lonely way. Everything about that drive felt normal. Comforting even. The highway signs passed by slowly, green letters glowing softly in my headlights. I kept glancing at the clock. 1:27 a.m. 1:35 a.m. 1:49 a.m. My thoughts drifted lazily from bills I hadn't paid yet to my sister's birthday next week to whether I should get new tires. Nothing important. Nothing scary. I wasn't jumpy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't expecting anything except sleep when I finally reached home. I remember humming along to the radio, tapping my fingers on the steering wheel, enjoying the calm dark stretching in front of me like a soft blanket. A lone owl swooped across the road. A tumbleweed bounced in the distance. I laughed at the sight. Nothing unusual for the desert. It was one of those nights where the world feels so quiet, so perfectly harmless, you start to forget anything bad could exist out there at all. I thought I was safe. I thought the road was mine alone. I thought the night was just another part of my routine. And for a while it was. Nothing in my mind, nothing in the air, nothing in that peaceful silent desert hinted that in less than an hour, my life would twist into something I still can't explain. Something that would make me rethink every dark road, every passing truck, every shadow in my rearview mirror. But right then everything was perfect. Peaceful. Normal. The first sign that something was off came so subtly, I almost didn't notice it at all. I was about halfway through the drive when the radio suddenly crackled. Not loudly. Not enough to startle me. Just a soft, glitchy distortion like the signal dipped for a second. The voice on the late-night broadcast stretched unnaturally, warping into a low, vibrating hum before snapping back to normal. I frowned, tapped the side of the radio, and blamed the mountains in the distance for blocking the reception. But something about that sound, the texture of it, made the hairs on my arms rise. A few minutes later I heard another sound. Very faint. Very soft. Tapping. At first I thought it was gravel popping under the tires. But it came again, light, rhythmic, like fingertips brushing the outside of the truck. I glanced at my mirrors, at the windows, at the dark road around me. Nothing. Just the quiet desert and that endless sweep of asphalt. Still the tapping kept coming. Tap, tap, tap. Slow. Deliberate. Like it had a pattern. I turned down the radio and listened harder, feeling my pulse quicken even though I didn't know why. Maybe a loose panel on the truck? Maybe a pebble caught in the tire treads? It could have been anything. But my body didn't buy it. Something, instinct, gut, whatever you call it, tightened inside me. I rolled the window up. The tapping stopped. For a moment, everything went back to silence. The road, the night, the hum of the engine, all normal again. I told myself I was being dramatic. Long shifts and empty highways can play tricks on anyone. I kept driving, forcing myself to relax my shoulders. But then the temperature inside the cab began to change. It didn't get colder, at least not in the usual way. The air just thickened. Heavy. Like I'd suddenly stepped into a room where someone had been breathing too close for too long. My chest felt tight. The back of my neck prickled. The air vents were blowing normally, but the atmosphere felt wrong, almost suffocating. Like someone else's breath was mixing with mine. I cracked the window open, hoping fresh air would help. It didn't. Instead, I got the sense, sharp, sudden, that someone was staring at me. Not from the road. Not from outside. From inside the truck. And yet, when I glanced at the passenger seat, the mirror, the back seat, there was nothing. Just darkness. Just space. Just empty leather seats reflecting the faint glow of the dashboard. But the feeling wouldn't go away. It kept crawling up my spine, sitting heavily across my shoulders like an invisible weight pressing down. I shifted in my seat, trying to shake it off. The radio crackled again. Another stretch of distorted voices. Another warping hum. This time the sound didn't go back to normal right away. It dragged on, low and vibrating, filling the cab with this strange, almost whispered trembling. I turned the dial to change stations, but the distortion didn't stop immediately. It hung in the background for a moment, as if it wasn't part of the radio at all. As if it was coming from somewhere behind me. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to check the back seat again. But I did anyway. Still nothing. Still empty. Still pitch black. I flipped on the interior light just to be sure. The light flickered. Not once. Not twice. But 3 times fast, like something brushed against the bulb. My stomach dropped. A wave of cold washed over me, even though the heater was on. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. But I couldn't point to a single physical thing that proved it. The truck wasn't malfunctioning. The road wasn't changing. Nothing was happening that would make a normal person panic. Except that every instinct I had screamed, "You're not alone." I snapped the light off and gripped the wheel harder, feeling my pulse thudding so hard it hurt. The empty road stretched ahead forever, swallowed by a thick, unnatural darkness. No cars. No lights. No signs of life. Just that creeping, suffocating feeling that the quiet wasn't really quiet. That something unseen had joined me in that cab. And that it was only waiting. Waiting for what, I didn't know. But the night suddenly felt a lot less empty. And the road felt a lot less safe. I was halfway through tightening the last bolt when the world around me suddenly shifted. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was subtle. Like the air itself had thickened. Like something massive had stepped into the atmosphere and every molecule had turned heavy in response. My breath hitched without me realizing it, and I found myself straightening slowly, listening. That's when I heard it. A soft dragging scrape. Not from the woods. Not from the road. But from beneath the truck. I froze. At first my mind tried to jump to the obvious, an animal, a branch, maybe a piece of metal shifting. But the sound repeated, longer this time, deliberately slow, like something was repositioning itself under the chassis. I crouched a little, trying to peer underneath, but my flashlight flickered again, dimming into a weak glow. All I could see was the dark underside of the truck, and something else. Something I didn't understand at first. 2 shapes. Rounded. Unmoving. Symmetrical. It took me an extra second to register what I was seeing. They were eyes. Not reflective like an animal's. Not bright. Not glowing. Just 2 glossy, wet circles staring back at me from the shadows. Too large to belong to anything natural I knew. The moment I blinked, they slid backward, deeper into the darkness. My spine turned to ice. I jerked backward so fast I nearly tripped. The flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled under the truck, casting wild spinning beams that made everything look warped. I didn't want to get closer. I didn't want to look again. But every instinct told me whatever was under there wasn't an animal. It had been too still, too quiet, too intentional. I reached into my pocket for my phone with shaking hands, but the screen stayed black. Dead. Even though it had been at 50% minutes ago. The forest around me went silent. Not quiet, silent. No wind. No crickets. No distant engines. Nothing. It was as if the entire world was holding its breath with me. Then the truck shook. Just once. A soft bounce of the suspension, like something had shifted its weight underneath. My heart exploded into my throat. I staggered backward until I hit the rear bumper. The cold metal jolted me back into motion, and I scrambled around to the driver's door, yanking on the handle even though I knew I had left the keys inside the toolbox on the ground. I didn't dare go back for them. Another sound came, this time from behind me. A low exhale. Human. But wrong. It was too long, too controlled, like whoever or whatever was making it didn't need to breathe but was imitating the action for effect. I turned slowly, and as my eyes adjusted, I saw something begin to emerge from under the truck. A hand. Or something shaped like one. Long fingers. Too many joints. Skin stretched thin like damp paper. Dirt clinging to it as though it had crawled out of the earth itself. It planted itself on the gravel, pulling a portion of its body forward without making a sound. I backed away, shaking so violently my knees almost gave out. The creature paused as if testing the air, then angled its head just far enough that I saw the full shape of its face. Those same wet eyes. Those same unnatural circles. Staring with an expression I can only describe as hunger mixed with curiosity. Something in me snapped. The moment its head tilted at that unnatural angle, my body reacted before my mind did. I ran. Not smartly. Not strategically. Just pure blind instinct. My boots slipped on the gravel as I bolted toward the tree line. Lungs locking, vision tunneling. Behind me I heard the first sound the creature truly made. A low scrape, then a burst of movement so fast it didn't sound like crawling or walking. It sounded like sliding. Like something pulling itself across the ground with horrifying speed. I didn't look back. Branches slapped my shoulders as I dove into the woods, weaving between trees, tripping, catching myself, gasping so loudly it felt like a beacon. The forest was pitch black except for thin slashes of moonlight breaking through like dying flashbulbs. Every step felt too slow. Every breath felt too loud. Every movement reminded me that something was right behind me. Then I heard it thud. A heavy wet thud. Not far at all. The creature had entered the woods. I sprinted harder, legs burning, heart hammering so violently it hurt. My mind screamed to keep moving, keep breathing, keep living. Every instinct told me that if I stopped for even a second it would be on me. A branch snapped just behind my left shoulder, too close. I veered right, skidding down a small slope of dirt and roots. My foot caught on something and I crashed forward, slamming onto my hands and knees. Pain spiked through my palms, but I pushed myself up instantly. I didn't even get halfway upright before I saw something move in my peripheral vision. A long finger, wrapping around the edge of a tree trunk 6 feet away. Then another finger. Then another. Then another. It was pulling itself around the tree, silently, like a nightmare trying not to break the rules of the real world. I scrambled backward, stumbling to my feet, and tore through the underbrush in a panic-fueled sprint. My breath came out in ragged bursts. Sweat stung my eyes. My vision blurred, but I kept moving. I didn't know where I was going, just away. The forest suddenly opened into a small clearing, moonlight flooding the space like a spotlight. Bad. Too open. Too visible. But it was either that or let the creature close in from the shadows. I dashed across the clearing, halfway through it when something wrapped around my ankle. My body jerked backward so violently I hit the ground with a nauseating thud. Gravel tore my skin. Air shot from my lungs. I clawed at the dirt as I was dragged backward toward the tree line. Toward the darkness where the creature waited. No and no and no. My fingers dug into the earth. I kicked wildly, connecting with something soft but solid. A hiss, low and furious, cut through the air. The grip loosened for a split second and I twisted, slamming my free leg into a thick root. Pain flared up my shin, but the root gave me leverage. I launched forward, ripping my leg out of its hold and scrambling on all fours before forcing myself upright. My ankle burned, throbbing like it had been crushed, but I didn't stop. I spotted a faint glint through the trees, my truck's metallic frame reflecting the moonlight. It was close. I sprinted, ignoring the screams of my muscles, ignoring the sharp cracks of pursuit behind me. I burst through the brush and nearly fell into the roadside gravel. The truck was still there. Door unlocked. Keys still in the toolbox. I didn't have time to think. I dove for the toolbox, flinging it open with trembling hands. The keys slipped once, twice, my fingers slick with sweat and dirt. Behind me, I heard another wet thud. Then the horrifying drag of something crossing the gravel. I jammed the key into the door, yanked it open, and threw myself inside, slamming it shut so hard the whole frame shook. The creature hit the door a split second later. The impact dented the metal inward, just inches from my ribs. A long pale hand spread across the window, fingertips tapping the glass like it was testing the strength. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't look at it. I shoved the key into the ignition with shaking hands and twisted. The engine groaned, coughed, stuttered. I screamed at it. Come on. And twisted again. This time it roared to life. The creature jerked backward at the sound, just enough for me to slam the truck into gear. Gravel sprayed behind the tires as I ripped out of the shoulder and back onto the road at full speed. The forest blurred past me. My vision swam. My heart felt like it was going to tear itself apart. But I didn't slow down. Not for a second. Because in my rearview mirror, something moved onto the road. Walking on 2 legs now. Watching me leave. And it didn't chase. It just stared, as if it knew this wasn't over. I didn't stop driving until the highway signs changed, until towns blurred past, until my pulse finally slowed from its frantic animal rhythm. By the time I pulled into a gas station 3 counties away, the sky was just starting to lighten into a dull gray blue. Dawn should have made me feel safe. It didn't. I sat in the truck with the engine running, hands still locked around the steering wheel, skin trembling like my bones were vibrating from the inside. For a long moment I couldn't move. I couldn't even swallow. Every sound outside, distant traffic, a gas pump beeping, someone opening a car door, felt sharp, dangerous, wrong. Eventually I forced myself out. My legs nearly gave out from the pain in my ankle. I limped into the bathroom, washed the dirt and blood off my hands and stared at my reflection. I looked like someone else. Someone who had just escaped something they weren't supposed to survive. I tried to explain it to myself logically. Fatigue, stress, adrenaline, a shadow, a predator, a wild animal. But none of those explanations matched what I saw. None matched that face or that impossible neck, or those fingers curling around the tree trunk. None matched the dragging sound that didn't belong to anything on earth. I needed proof. Something to convince myself it wasn't some hallucination from exhaustion. So after resting at a motel for 4 hours, door bolted, chair wedged under the knob, lights on, I made a decision I regret to this day. I drove back. Not all the way. Not into the forest. Not even close to where I first saw it. Just to the shoulder of the road, near the place where my truck had been parked. By the time I reached the area, the sun was high enough to erase the shadows. The trees looked ordinary, thin, harmless. A gentle wind rustled through them, carrying none of the cold, suffocating weight I felt the night before. For a second I started to believe I had imagined it. But then I saw the gravel. Deep drag marks. Long streaks, almost like someone had pulled a heavy body across the ground. Except the pattern wasn't chaotic. It wasn't random. It was directional, leading from the forest toward the exact spot where I had been standing. I crouched down to touch one of the grooves, and the moment my fingers brushed the dirt, a cold vibration ran up my arm. Not physical, more like the memory of being grabbed. I pulled back instantly, my chest tightening. That's when I noticed something else. On the side of my truck, near the rear door, were 3 indentations. Deep ones. Almost perfectly spaced. Like fingertips. But not human fingertips. Longer. Sharper. Pressed into the metal as if the door had been made of clay. I stood there in complete silence, listening to the wind shift through the branches above me. It almost sounded like whispering. Like something was close, just out of sight, waiting for me to make another mistake. I got back into my truck and left the area immediately, tires kicking up dust as I sped away. Every few seconds I checked the mirrors, half expecting to see a pale figure stepping out of the trees again, head tilted, watching me. Nothing appeared. But that didn't make me feel better, because that meant it was still somewhere in the woods. Somewhere behind me. Somewhere out of view. That night at home I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw its hand sliding around that tree. I heard the gravel shifting. I felt the grip on my ankle tightening again. And just when I finally drifted into an uneasy sleep, something woke me. A sound. Familiar one. Tap, tap, tap. Against my bedroom window. I froze. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Because deep down I already knew, it wasn't the wind.